Hello and welcome to the British Sitcom History Podcast. This is part 2 of our look at Marriage Line, so if you haven't listened to part 1 yet, please do go back and do that one first. We've already talked in detail about Richard Briers and Richard Waring the writer, and we are halfway through our episode that we are concentrating on, which is the last one of Series 1. So we're just about to jump back into that, so let's get on with it now. But yeah, so George, he's not concerned with the big light. He's concerned with money. And he's basically said, oh, damn it all, let's get a couple of items on the Never Never. And she's kind of taking it too far, and he's getting a bit worried. And he's so worried about it that he overcomes his natural obsequiousness and says, you know what, I'm going to go and stand up to the landlord because all we need is a lick of paint, and then that won't cost us anything. The landlord will pay for it.
He has a little practice, doesn't he, Alan? So he decides he steals himself. I'm going to go and give that landlord a piece of my mind. And she leaves the room, and he sort of mimes this conversation that he's going to have. He's wagging his finger, and he's, but it's odd because it's wordless. You know, he's not like, this is a fairly common sitcom trope where we see someone having a difficult conversation and there's a pull back and reveal that they're just practicing in front of a mirror. Like, we've seen that 100 times. That's not even that. He's just like miming, wagging his finger and saying sorts of things that he might say, but not actually saying them. It's insane.
Yeah, and then that moves straight into a non-dialogue kind of montage.
Oh, I like this.
Is location stuff of him walking down the street. We don't get a lot of location filming in this series in general.
When he goes into Mr. Cartwright is the name of the landlord. He goes into there, and it looks for all the world like Ebenezer Scrooge's office in The Muppet Christmas Carol.
Scrooge was what I wrote down, yeah.
Yeah. You know, he says the secretary gatekeeper couldn't care less about him, and just he says, take a seat. And he's like, oh, no, I'll stand. And he proceeds to pace up and down the 2 meters of this office until he gets bored and sits down.
And fascinating that there's music involved here, which helps to kind of
I noticed this. The music slows down, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there is music in this, and I mean, I don't know quite enough about the sort of technical era of the time, but I think this is going to be live music. This is.
Yeah, I thought it might be.
Yeah. You know, a 4-piece string thing, like off camera, just playing live music. And just to skip forward slightly, when he comes back home, he sees that Kate has bought a load of stuff and spent a load of money. And there's a 1960s equivalent of a record scratch. As he kind of goes, oh! It's like this kind of violin that kind of...
I think it was a clarinet, Alan. I think it was a clarinet. I wrote down, clarinet here. It's serious. Here's a clarinet.
Hello, darling. Gibbons were going to deliver, but I just couldn't wait, so I took a taxi.
I found it fascinating because, you know, most of the music in this show is pretty incidental. It's kind of just like background kind of mood sort of vibes. But this was really silent comedy, punctuate the action kind of musical scoring to help sell this montage because there was no dialogue or anything.
So it's rare that I notice music. It's not like something that I'm big on. But like I say, 3 or 4 times I wrote down notes on the music. So it has an effect. It's a character.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about Mr. Cartwright's office because I found it quite fascinating that, and this is an entirely new set that we will never see again, just for this scene. But it's not a sparse set. This is a detailed, full
it's detailed,
set.
Isn't it? There's a lot going on in there, yeah.
And it's not particularly small either, considering we've got the normal full house, lobby, neighbour's house, kitchen. That whole set is all there because we're in all those rooms in this episode. So this must be squeezed in round the back somewhere.
Yeah.
But the detail, like even we have Scrooge's office, we have the secretary's little sort of anti-office.
And then when we open the door, when George comes in, we can see outside the office as well. There's like a staircase there as well.
There's a little vestibule type thing. Yeah. And in that little corridor bit, there's a radiator. And that jumped out at me like that's detailed. That wasn't like, oh, we better have a corridor. We're going to see that for 3 seconds. Don't worry about it. They've put stuff in it. They've put a radiator in it. They've got filing cabinets, got books and all this kind of stuff. They've got a window in the background with E.J. Cartwright and Sons estate agents stenciled on it, but backwards, obviously, because we're on the inside. That's so much detail there. like, I don't think you...
It's great.
Could you afford
It's
to
really
do
good.
that these days? I don't think you would get that in a sitcom these days. But yeah, I found that absolutely fascinating. But yeah, the landlord himself, Mr. Cartwright, he's got an unlit fag just hanging out of his side of his mouth constantly, and like fag ash all
That
down
was weird,
his
wasn't
nice
it?
suit.
Because, we see fag ash on his suit. Was it unlit then? Because I wondered about that. Because I remember when I was a kid, there were those blokes who had, like, they had a yellow little streak at the top of their hair by the side of them, because they just had permanent cigarette smoke. Like,
Is it a particular affectation for this character that they've come up with, that he's always got a cigarette but it's not lit because he's so tight with his money, like he only has it when he really wants it, when he needs
maybe
it.
that's it. Maybe that's it. But yeah, just leave it in the packet, mate. Like, put it in your mouth because you need your hands. But if it's not lit, what's the point? But of course, we've got a joke here which you see coming from a mile away, because Cartwright has a hearing aid. I mean, anything could happen. Anything could happen.
I tell you what, in the 1960s and 70s, a big deaf aid, big metal box with a wire going into your ear, that was classic comedy fodder.
I hope it switched on, Alan. That's all I can say.
These things, they never work, guys. I don't know if anyone ever had one of these that actually functioned. Now, I think we should give props to Fawlty Towers. They probably did it the best. They got a lot of mileage out of that.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, that, because I was thinking about Mrs. Richards. That style of hearing aid where you had the sort of the thing in your ear and then like a big visible wire that came down and a big sort of metal box that either sat in your pocket or on a lapel or something like that.
It must have had a huge battery in it, I guess.
Well, it had a huge battery in it, but also the microphone in it. Like, that was where the microphone was, so that you could kind of, it was in the room, because microphone technology wasn't all that great. But those were the kind of first generation of hearing aids. And then the ones that we see now that are sort of over your ear, obviously they were a bit bulkier when they first happened, but that was in the late 60s. So those over the ear hearing aids didn't exist in 1963. Do you know what that was? That was transistor technology that made those smaller.
Ah. That's interesting, because obviously by the time we get Mrs. Richards in Fawlty Towers, that's well into the 70s. I guess the idea is that she's older and she's not buying a new hearing aid. I've got a perfectly good one. Exactly. Yeah, that's interesting, yeah. I guess what comes before this is your classic comedy ear horn, which you would have on a Downton Abbey, perhaps, an old dowager who would have a horn pressed to her ear,
like a big gramophone speaker thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What did he say?
So George has his little tirade and says his piece about how the place is a disgrace, and of course, in a joke predicted by Nostradamus, the hearing aid isn't on, and he has to repeat himself.
Yeah. I tell you what, just a note as well here, before we move off from the set, particularly when he's waiting around in the secretary's office, there's some very interesting camera work. The camera is up very high and kind of looking down upon George. And it's not particularly common for us to see the floor of a studio, really. But and I'd like to say that there was some sort of artistic flair behind that to kind of create this sense of kind of...
I think it might have been a space problem, because there weren't enough room, so they had to lift the camera up on the side.
I think that might have been it, yeah, to be fair.
Yeah, maybe.
But once we're in the office, it's pretty standard stuff. And so obviously George says, look, this is no good. You need to sort out this flat or we're leaving. There's plenty of other flats, don't you know? And Mr. Cartwright says, all right then, I'll give you 2 weeks notice.
Off you go.
Piss off.
Yeah. Yeah.
He doesn't do it as a threat to kind of make this man back down. He's very literal. All right, see ya. I'll feel it by this afternoon. Yeah. And I'm going to charge more.
And isn't it great that sort of behaviour by landlords doesn't exist anymore?
Well, it is interesting that he goes, all right, here's 2 weeks notice, and there's absolutely no redress there. Like, that's it. Get out.
You have to give a month now, don't you? You have to give a month these days, so things have changed. Cartwright says, Mr. Starling, I can let your flat 10 times over every week in the year. And it's true. Right, yeah. It still is supply and demand, And any sort of flat or house that's to be let has got so many people applying for it. It's ridiculous. We are straying away from comedy here, but there's a bit earlier where George and Kate are sort of on a waiting list for a mortgage. They need to save up a deposit. They need to persuade the bank that they're a good risk, the building society rather than the bank. And I guess in 1963 that was the aspiration. That was kind of the direction you were heading. You'd have to save up 20% deposit, and you'd have to be able to prove that you'd got enough income to pay the mortgage. And that's still the case, but it's just so much harder now. I suppose the difference then was that there wasn't as much money. Like the supply, basically building societies only lent money that they had, whereas now banks will just borrow money from other banks, and there's this sort of revolving door of virtual cash. So it's a lot easier to borrow money, and obviously in 2008 the whole market crashed, and that's why it's now again hard for people to borrow money.
But it's that, in fact, in the later series that are no longer existing, this becomes a big plot point of them trying to get a mortgage.
Okay.
And so there's the whole episode is like the building society comes through, says you've got the mortgage, and they weren't expecting that. They didn't think they were going to get it. And then he gets this offer for a job in Africa, and like it's this whole thing where they then have to decide like what do we want to do. And at some point they buy a house. And they kind of move a little bit further out of the city, and like because also like the flat they're in now, they're not allowed kids in there. That's one of the rules. Yeah. And so you can't start a family and have children until you've got your house. You can't get your house until you get your proper career going. And he's not the pushy type, and so he's not got that rise. He's not got that promotion. Well, George, when are you ever going to satisfy my need to have a family? Like it's all this pressure on him. Which all boils down to, well, the neighbour's got a promotion, why haven't you?
Yeah.
But this episode does kind of sum it all up quite succinctly. There's pressure on a young couple to achieve the things that they're told they should achieve, but also that they need to achieve in order to live in a comfortable way and have a family if that's what they want. But obviously, whether they want it or not, that's what they're going to do. So it's. I think this is very relatable. I do genuinely think if you were a sort of a slightly naive middle class couple in the '60s, this would have really hit you. Yeah,
no, I agree. And now they're screwed because they've got nowhere to live. So George has got to make this right, and he goes out and he tries to find an alternative. So that's when we're going into these different estate agents. Incidentally, it was never made clear to me, what day is it? Is this on the weekend? Because shouldn't he be at work? Like, he's got his suit and tie on, but that's by the by. He's always wearing his suit and tie, so that makes no difference, really.
That's a good question, actually, yeah. I don't think we addressed that, did we?
No. But yeah, so he's wandering in and out of these estate agents. Did you notice there was a tobacconist next door to one of them? I had a good old look at that. I paused and had a good old look at that. They were selling Players. So Players cigarettes really resonated for me because that's what our grandma used to smoke. They were filterless cigarettes. In fact, I don't know if I've made this memory up, but I think I remember going to the shop and buying them for her in the late 70s, which I think I wasn't really allowed, but they're for your grandma, no problem. Yeah.
Hey, do you know what? I recently watched the very first episode of The Royal Family.
Yeah,
98, and there's a bit in that where they send Anthony off to buy cigarettes, and he's like, "Oh, can I get some for myself?" She goes, "No, you're only 15. You can't smoke until you can buy them for yourself." But then he's going to buy them for his parents.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
As well as an advert for Players cigarettes, there was also an advert for Bristol's tipped cigarettes, and this is genuinely interesting because they had the filters. You've picture a cigarette, it's got the white cigarette and it's got that little orange filter at the bottom. But in 1963, that was still a selling point. They were relatively new filters.
Yeah, filters for women and pansies. I like my
it's like
unfiltered tar.
It's like diet cigarettes, basically. Their slogan was, take a tip, take a Bristol.
Oh.
So here's an interesting fact for you, which I read. It was not until 1965 that the sales of filtered cigarettes took over from filterless cigarettes. So in 1963, when this was made, that was still like here's the new thing, this is the latest trend.
Yeah. Can you imagine just the stink of it all? God.
Yeah. My next door neighbour smokes outside the back garden, and it's summer at the moment. Windows open. I have to shut my windows. It does stink. And I know that when I was a kid, a teenager, everything must have stunk like that because everyone smoked. I did.
I remember going to my grandma's house, and you would just stink after because she would hotbox the place. Yeah, horrible.
I always wonder about people who go outside their own house to smoke. Like, what? You obviously know it stinks because you're outside your house. You don't want to do that dirty thing inside your house. Do you not think the rest of us can smell that on you? Like, we talk about you when you leave the room. You stink.
Oh, bless them.
Anyway, that's a nice message for some of our listeners who may smoke stuff. Right, so Also next door to the tobacconist on these exterior shots was a shop called Walklin. Now, I probably did a deep dive on this. Walklin was a North London bakery, and they had branches in Rainham and Stoke Newington. So that is where our characters live. How about that? I like them onions. That is some deep research.
That is nice and specific. All right, excellent.
Anyway, he now goes home. He's got to tell Kate that they're moving out. They've lost the flat because he tried to assert himself and failed utterly. Yes.
As usual, he can't just come in and say it. And I will say, this was a big frustration for me. Like, all these episodes,
God, yeah.
like, so much of their stuff is just like, just talk to each other. Be on, even if you're going to talk around it a bit, you need to get to the point here, right? Be honest with each other.
Alan, have you ever heard of, in script writing, the cell phone problem? Have you heard of this concept? So the idea is that in modern script writing, it's very difficult to create any jeopardy because anyone watching will just go, well, just ring them. So it's called the cell phone problem, and they have to address it. Often you'll have like, oh, there's no signal here or whatever. So look out for it now in modern films and things. That, like the cell phone problem, they have to kind of deal with it. In 1963, there's no such thing as cell phones, but it's the same fucking thing. Like, this could all be resolved if you just spoke to each other. Like, just talk to each other and we'll be fine. Not just this episode, but constantly. Every episode I watch, it's like, just talk to each other.
Yeah, and I do get that, relationships, sometimes the communication isn't great, especially they're a young couple. They're married, they don't know each other that well, I guess.
Of course,
they've been together for a year. They've been courting for a year before they got married. Like, it's not like they literally just met. But, they're learning about each other because they're actually living together now. And I guess I can't fathom that. but also, there's this emotional repression of the 1960s where you can't just be honest. You can't say, I'm worried about this. But then they eventually do. Like, the whole point of this is they eventually go, oh, darling, why don't we just be honest? From now on, we'll always be honest with each other, won't we, darling? Yes, darling. And it's just really irritating.
I've written a note here. Sitcom marriages in the 60s and 70s were basically Stockholm Syndrome with Sherry. She's like a hostage. They don't have any. They don't seem to have. You're right. They do love each other, and that we keep coming back to that. But they don't seem to have any rapport. That's the problem.
Yeah, but I think. On what basis did you get married in the 1960s? It was someone who lived within 800 yards of you because you need to be able to walk to their house. Their parents like you.
I think people could walk further than that, but I take your point.
But you haven't got a wide sort of range of people to meet. You probably only spend never more than like an hour alone at any point because her mum keeps walking into the living room when you're trying to get your hand up a cardigan. And then I only know about this stuff from sitcoms, so it's hard to judge. Now, as far as I know, from On the Buses, you're 53 years old, you live with your mum, and you're trying to get off with 20-year-old Chippy. People, you did struggle to have any time together, and you couldn't live together. So, marriages were based on people who didn't really know each other, and you muddle through or you don't.
So in this scene, he's trying to break the news that they've lost their flat, and she's whittering on about how she's told Nora that George has got a pay rise. It's not really a lie; it's just positive thinking.
And darling, I'll never go to heaven. I told Nora a whopping great lie. It just slipped out. I'm so embarrassed, you see, having to borrow off, especially now Peter's appointment's been confirmed. Did you know? Oh, no, of course you didn't. Well, it has, and they're going north in a week or two, so I thought they'll never find me out. So I told Nora that you'd had a rise too.
I quite like that. And she's sort of speaking very quickly here, but
she's manic.
It's quite
she's manic again. She's got all the stuff, all the stuff that she's ordered has arrived. All the standard lamp and the chandelier and so on. She's unpacking it all, and she is manic. She's completely out of control.
It's like when your Amazon packages arrive, isn't it? It's like you just get excited about it.
Unboxing.
Oh, I forgot I ordered this.
That's the word. She's unboxing.
But it's good, and I think we're perhaps being a little negative on it here. Let's be the positives. The two central performances are absolutely fantastic. They really do bring a lot of life and charm to these characters. And again, like it's rat-a-tat-tat-tat, but it never loses its flow, and it's always got that personality to it. All the performances generally throughout, Peter and Nora, very solid as well. Actually, just quickly while I'm on it. let's talk about the other actors who are in the show in general. Peter here and Nora. Peter is played by Ronald Hines.
This is funny, Alan, because I know that name. I read it on the screen, and I even went and looked him up, and I like nothing clicked. But I feel like I know that name.
No, I don't know. It's weird. It's one of those people that you kind of feel like you've seen him in something. But,
Yeah.
I mean, he's in a lot of things. Don't get me wrong. His biggest role was in Not in Front of the Children, which was Richard Waring's follow-up to this. So a few years later. And there's actually... So he plays the husband of the couple. But actually, he wasn't in the first series. He came in as a replacement in the second series in about 1967. So it was not long after this show finished.
Do these two stay in marriage lines the whole way through or not?
No. So as you see in this episode, they find out his promotion is going to take him to Edinburgh and they're going to move away.
Right.
And there's one episode in series 2 where they come back to visit and it causes a bit of friction. But basically, yeah, that's it. They're gone now. But yeah, Ronald Hines was in Not in Front of the Children with Wendy Craig, like an early starring role for Wendy Craig as a neurotic housewife. And then Nora here is played by Christine Finn.
I think she's really good. I really liked her.
Yeah. Well, she's probably best known because she's the voice of Tintin on Thunderbirds.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, great. I like that.
Tintin, who I think she's Japanese, maybe, or something like that. She's some sort of Asian.
I don't think it matters.
Didn't matter back then.
She's exotic.
Yeah. But she's the voice of that. But then she stopped working in the late 60s, when she would have been in her 30s, I guess. So I don't know what became of her after that. Later on, there's a regular character called Miles. He works with George and is a good friend of George's, and he becomes the regular kind of other man character when they move away. And he was played by Edward D'Souza, who is a very well-established actor. Yeah, I mean, he was in all sorts of things. But perhaps best known from our point of view, he was in a latter series of After Henry, playing the love interest to Prunella Scales' character.
Yes.
And he's kind of this. He's British, but he's of like Portuguese heritage or something. So he basically plays swarthy Mediterranean gentleman and things. He's in the One Foot in the Grave special, One Foot in the Algarve. He's in that as a swarthy Portuguese gentleman, and he seemed to find his place as a sort of middle-aged, Lothario. And just while we're on it, the only other sort of really regular characters that we have are George's parents. They pop up quite a lot. And again, they kind of there to provide the older generation, this kind of this couple who have been together for 30 years. And yes, of course, we don't like each other. That is not relevant. We just get on with it. That kind of vibe. Although, it's actually, they do have a kind of a nice relationship in their own way.
I recognised his father. Who's the actor who played his father?
The father is played by Jeffrey Sumner, who we saw, he was in the Army Game. He was the Major Upshot Bagley in the Army Game. So he's the man in charge of the barracks. Mm-hmm. But do you know what? I was reading about him. Apparently he kept pigs. But do you remember in the Army Game where the Major was like...
pigs.
But he was obsessed with his pigs, wasn't he? And that was a big thing in the show.
Oh, that's right, yeah, he was. I wonder if he brought that in.
Yeah, I don't know, but weird. Anyway, the mother is played by Diana King. Now, she's just been in everything, right? She's been in one episode of everything, like one of those actors. However, just for our purposes, probably most notable is that she played Captain Peacock's wife in Are You Being Served? In a few episodes of that.
I remember her, general angry sitcom wife.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the kind of regulars. It is really focused on our main couple here.
Well, there is another actor about to appear, so we'll return to this thought. So what's happening now is we're back in the flat. George needs to tell Kate that they're homeless. Kate's too busy with all these new possessions. Then Peter and Nora arrive from next door with congratulations on your pay rise, George. That doesn't exist. This is great. Come and have a cocktail because Peter's used his pay rise money to buy a cocktail shaker. Ooh. And now someone knocks at the door and it's the estate agent to show round new tenants because the landlords want someone new in there.
Classic sitcom stuff.
Oh my God,
ramp up the tension.
But going back to our actors, the estate agent is John Nettleton, who I immediately recognised his face. I was like, where do I know from? And of course, he's Sir Arnold in Yes Minister, isn't he?
Yes, he is indeed. It's funny because I knew you would say Yes Minister, but for me, he's in The New Statesman. He's in the
New Statesman as well.
The New Statesman as the older kind of MP there. That's kind of what I know him from. But yeah, John Nettleton, one of those actors who's been around the block a few times. Love a little part here, gets the job done.
Great.
Like there's kind of
he does great.
There's not much you can do with this, but they burst in. He's showing this young couple around. They're like, "Oh, it's amazing. Considering all the other places we've seen, this is wonderful." And it's just to really hammer it home, like this is a nice place.
And it's like, you were saying how the neighbours are like our couple, but a couple of years on.
Yeah,
this couple who are looking around they're Kate and George, but a year earlier,
and very very literally because. Earlier in the episode, just to hammer this home, George says, "No, you do like it. They remember when we came to look round, you even cried at the estate agent." Mm-hmm. And so, sure enough, this young couple comes round and the girl starts crying. Oh, it's so beautiful. It's such a home. It's not just a house, it's a home. And so they whirl in and out like just a whirlwind coming in, and then we're left with the consequences.
So now George finally gets it out that they've lost, that what's about to happen. And she says, this is a quote, "You've lost the flat. Our first home, and you've thrown it away." This is her fault! This is her fault!
But there is a moment here where we actually sort of come to the end. We get the kind of, they do like each other really. She sort of hugs him and says, "Oh, everything's going to be all right," kind of thing. And
did you catch what she said? She said, I'm not ashamed of you, darling. I've even stopped dreaming about Dr. Kildare."
I guess a big laugh, that as well. It's a great little gag, that.
Dr. Kildare was an American sitcom. Not an American sitcom, an American drama with Richard Chamberlain, which would have been probably one of the most popular things on television at that time.
So basically our conclusion to the episode is that George goes back to his true nature, and so instead of being a pushy person, becomes a crawler again, calls up Mr. Cartwright, and basically is just obsequiously disgusting and says...
Grovels. He grovels.
He grovels, yeah.
He begs.
And so Mr. Cartwright says, "Yeah, but I'm putting the rent up a guinea a week." And he has to just take it. He bends over and takes it.
That's the punchline. Can I just have a little diversion on guineas? You know what guineas are?
Well, I do, but my American girlfriend, like I said, I made her watch this. She was like, "What? This is a guinea? What's that?"
Yeah,
I find, am I correct? A guinea is a pound and a shilling?
Correct. That is correct. And it's still a thing. Like, it's only really a thing in horse racing now. There's the 1,000 guineas horse race, which is, I guess, £1.05 now, post-decimalisation.
Well, I don't know. I guess you might know the history of it, but does it have any value other than it's just a fancy way of making yourself stand out?
It is just fancy. So basically, it goes back to, it's very literally gold that was taken from Guinea, West Africa. And in Britain, they minted these special pound gold coins from this Guinea gold. But because it was gold, the value fluctuated. It wasn't worth a pound. And so this is like in the 17th century. So in the early 18th century, they fixed the price of these coins at £1 and 1 shilling a guinea. And why did it persist? Why does it still exist? You're right. It's because it's fancy. It's just, that's all it is. It sounds fancy. So things like art would be sold in guineas, and horse racing prizes would be in guineas, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And even in the 60s, it's a flag. It's a flag to say,
it's property.
Ponzi's.
It's property. Property is still seen as that kind of old-fashioned. We deal in the old ways here,
Nonsense. Right. I want to make a general note about this episode and the way it sort of comes around, because basically what happens is that George, he knows he's not a pushy type. He kind of accepts that, but he gets his dander up and he makes an effort to be pushy and gets immediately slapped down. And so he learns to be a crawler. Would this be better from a sitcom point of view? Wouldn't it make more sense and be funnier and blah, 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 if George, for some reason, is pushy, finds that it works, like he does something and it works, and then he's like, "Oh, it works, I'm going to get more pushy, I'm going to get more pushy, I'm going to get more pushy," and then hubris overtakes him and he gets slapped down. And he realises, like, "Oh, I went too far." That seems like a more obvious comedy trajectory.
I would argue that is kind of what happened. It just didn't happen quite in as much depth as you're saying. He psyched himself up, he got pushy.
Yeah, but he never gets a point where pushiness works. We never get an example of, like, that should be the opening of the episode where he puts his foot down about something and it, like, actually works. Right. Like, he gets a pay rise because he finally stood up, and so he's like, "Right, I'm going to go and kick the landlord up as well." But because basically what would happen then is our ending would be, okay, he's got too big and now he's got knocked back down, but ultimately it's like, it's okay. Whereas our ending now is, you're a pathetic loser, you tried to do something, you got smacked down, Now you're a pathetic loser. And the ending of the episode is not funny. He puts the phone down he says to his wife's happy because they've got the house back, and he says, yeah, but we have to pay an extra guinea a week, and I'm not going to get a pay rise, so that's coming out of the housekeeping. And she's like, oh, well, at least we've got each other.
And she starts packing up all the new stuff that she's bought.
Yeah. They walk out of the house. It's a really tragic, horrible ending. To the series. It's not just the episode. This is the end of the series.
Don't get any ideas.
Yeah. Horrible.
Do you know what? I've just realised we haven't really spoken about Prunella Scales in any depth.
Yeah.
So, again, I know we've covered her before when we talked about Faulty Towers, but give us a bit of basic outline on Prunella.
Well, I tell you what's unusual about Prunella Scales' kind of journey into the industry, as opposed to most of the people we see who just kind of do rep and that's it. She had TV and film credits really early on, like in her early 20s. So she went to drama school, or very, very securely middle-class kind of private school kind of lifestyle. But basically went to drama school and did work in theatre and did rep and all that, but also was getting film roles and TV roles in the 50s. That's unusual, even by the standards of the day. But nothing like too kind of notable until Marriage Lines. This is definitely the breakthrough role for both of them. So I saw an interview with Prunella Scales, and she said how they had to write in the pregnancy storyline in series 2 because she got pregnant with her son. That's not true. This was an interview in 2012.
Sorry, what is this? Are you saying Prunella Scales is a liar?
I'm saying her memory might not be quite what it once was.
Oh dear, all right. And now I feel bad because that is probably true.
Well, actually, no, the interview I was watching was from 2012, but that's still 50 years hence. But basically what I'm saying is that her eldest son was born in 1966, which was when the 5th series was going out. So I suspect they did have to write in that they were having another child because of that. So I think she's just conflated some memories there. But that second series decision to make them have a child and move into a bigger house must have been a narrative choice. And it was like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Let's move them out of their little town flat and into a bigger house. Actually, not that much bigger, but a flat. And they have a baby and blah, blah, blah. But we'll come into that. But in terms of Prunella Scales, yeah. So she had her first child in 1966. And then basically, after Marriage Lines, for the next 5 years, there's no TV credits. I suspect there's probably not a lot of theatre work there as well. And it's just had 2 young children, basically. So you take a little bit of a break. Starts working again in the 70s, but the big comeback really is Faulty Towers. That's 1975, right? She's only 41 in Faulty Towers.
But that was a comeback role then, so she'd been out of the public eye for a while.
I mean, it wasn't the first thing she did, but it was certainly the big notable comeback role. And even now, is kind of what she's identified with. If you were going to say what's Prunella Scales' headline, it's Faulty Towers.
Certainly,
it's Sybil Faulty. It's weird, isn't it? You kind of go, oh yeah, Faulty Towers, that's Prunella Scales. That represents, let's say it took 12 weeks to rehearse and record the series. 2 series. That's maybe 6 months of your life. Spread out over 5 years. So it's like, there's a lot of other stuff going on, isn't there? And she was doing loads of other work. But the next big kind of hit, I guess, was After Henry, which was not until 1988 that started on the TV. So if you're interested in After Henry, I did a Forgotten Sitcoms episode on it. So if you go to our YouTube channel, you can watch me talking about After Henry, doing a bit of a review of that. And it's such a sort of dull Radio 4 kind of show where nothing happens. But people like it. People liked it at the time. It was a big hit. And I think it's just because it's so quiet and the sort of thing you can fall asleep to on a Sunday night. But that was kind of very Prunella Scales. This was very quiet and pastoral, very different to Sybil Faulty. Because what we see later on in her life is pottering on a canal barge with her husband. That's kind of
I remember that.
And like her and Timothy West. So Timothy West is her husband, himself a very famous actor. Although if you want to talk sitcoms, Brass is probably the closest thing he has to like a big sitcom.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a sitcom, but I remember Brass. You can tell me in a minute when that was, but I remember being allowed to stay up to watch Brass because it was on 8 o'clock.
It was the 80s.
So I'm not. Yeah. It was probably early 80s.
Yeah. He was in an episode of After Henry, for example. He was sort of made loads of guest roles in sitcoms. But like in their later life, they did a show called Great Canal Journeys, where it was just like, oh, let's see an elderly couple on a canal barge. And again, it's the sort of thing that's like, well, I don't know who's watching that, but it became this very sort of tender representation of a loving couple, but also Prunella Scales going through quite serious dementia and progressively worse dementia, and them dealing with that. So it became this very sort of touching look at that kind of life. So now, as we record, Prunella Scales is still alive. She's 93 years old. Timothy West died in November 2024. So I can only assume she's in some sort of full-time care.
Yeah.
But he was 90 by that point anyway, you know. And they have a son, Samuel West, who is whose first performances were in utero on the 5th series of Marriage Lines, but is now a very, very famous actor in his own right, but not really known.
He's a director
sitcom,
as well, isn't he?
So,
he's very theatrical, Sam West, isn't he?
Yeah, it's a bit more theatre, but he's done plenty of TV and stage. But like sitcom-wise, nothing much to talk about there. So whatever. I'm sure you had a great career, mate. But
whatever.
So yeah, but like really, Prunella Scales a very long, prolonged career and a very well-respected actor, but probably going to be Fawlty Towers that she's.
I imagine so.
So before we wrap up, I do want to talk a little bit about what happens in the later series, because it does develop. Basically, you know, the second series. Well, actually, no, sorry, the second series is missing, but the second series is about them moving house. They move out of town into a sort of a nicer place and all this kind of stuff. But the third series, they have a child.
They have a baby.
And that is a big deal, but also quite a natural progression for these characters. Mm-hmm. I think it's a nice continuation of story. This is an episodic show, but then they pull in this overarching narrative. And so series 3 becomes much more narrative driven. The series is we're having a baby, and that it's that progression. They move into a new house, they're preparing for a baby, she's having a baby, they've had a baby, we're bringing the baby home. That's basically like 6 episodes, isn't it? But it works, and I think it still kind of works. But there's some unusual things go on here.
There's a really odd episode. There's a really peculiar episode where they've just had the baby, and she's in hospital. This funny thing where, like, basically she's going into hospital, so he's like, well, what do I do then? Basically, she encourages him to go to the pub and get drunk. Like, just fuck off, babe. Just get rid of him.
Yeah, what's he going to do? What is he possibly going to do?
What I found really funny about that episode was, like, she is in labour, and there's just no change in her demeanour at all. It's just like all business. You know, she's waddling a bit, basically. You know, just. But the joke of that is he gets drunk, he stays out, he's hungover, he's late to the hospital. Turns out he's going to be a terrible father from day one. That's the you know. But then we have this episode where we have this series of flash forwards. So it's him imagining what this little girl's going to be like as she gets older. And then they have more children. In this imagination, they have more children. And then we flash forward to their children's weddings and to when he's a grandparent. And it ends up being quite sweet. But at first, I did not like it at all. It was really weird. And like it was projecting George's neuroses about being a father. And so in these imaginations, these daydreams, the kids are terrible. You know, everything goes wrong, you know. And so it's quite an unhappy projection.
That's quite in keeping with his character, though, and the neuroses that the two of them display. And yeah, it's a weird episode, though, isn't it? Because it's just structurally, it's not what we're used to. And I think ultimately I kind of appreciated it as something a little bit different.
It was certainly, as a format, it was interesting. Like I say, we often see in sitcoms, you know, where they've run out of ideas and you do a sort of flashback episode, but especially in American sitcoms. But I don't think I've ever seen I'm not saying I've never seen a flash forward before, but where a whole episode is structured around, you know, the next 40 years. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
But I think it works because it's literally he's just had a child and he's thinking ahead of like, well, what am I going to do when she's a little girl? What am I going to do when she's growing up and wants to get married and I have to meet the prospective boyfriends and all this? I think it makes sense and it gives us an opportunity to have a little fun with it. This really highlighted for me, though, that this is George and Kate Starling, right, that we're looking at, but it's the George Starling show. And like I say, this is written by a man, so I guess that's what we're dealing with. He's obviously writing from his own perspective. It's very much George's stuff that we deal with mostly, and Kate is there to be a neurotic kind of mess who triggers him in a lot of ways. We do occasionally sort of get these little glimpses of, like, how is Kate dealing with this and what is she going to do about it? But nowhere near in the same capacity. I mean, in this episode, Kate is basically in a bed and she's on screen for about 3 minutes, and then George goes off and does his own
she's
episode.
in the flash forwards.
Yeah. And then, like, when he's off getting drunk, she's having a baby. It's like, well, we can't... What are we going to do about that? There's no drama to be had there, so we'll go and see what George is doing.
It's all pretty boring, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think it's important to acknowledge that. It is very much kind of written, and especially as we're moaning so much about her character being annoying. This is written by a man. It's not an insightful depiction of the female side of things. But yeah, it's I do find it, the series 3, which is the one that exists so we can kind of watch it, it's kind of interesting. It's developing into something slightly more narrative. But not quite. It never quite. And bear in mind, this is the 60s. Like, even what is a sitcom hasn't really been established.
I was just about to say, we've talked about this before when we've talked about 1960s sitcoms. The form isn't set yet. You know, they're still experimenting with different things. And like you said, is it completely episodic? Does it have that overriding arc? And there's no set format yet. They're still figuring it all out.
Yeah. I mean, even now, obviously, we always talk about those grey lines of what's a sitcom or what isn't. But yeah, this is not that they're not doing in this is like, okay, our characters are 25 and they're going to have to stay 25 for the next 5 years because that's what we're dealing with. Yeah, they can grow, and the whole point of the show is to show young couple growing. I think it's nice. I quite like that element of it. In terms of the radio series that I listened to, and so I kind of got a sense of what was happening with the rest of the development of the characters and stuff. Like, in terms of tone and style, it's all very much the same. It is really... Right, it is what it is. Like, for example, there's an episode where they're having the christening, and, like, God almighty, the things that go wrong, you know? And I mean, it's like... because he finds out that he's going off to Africa, so his flight... is supposed to be the next day, but then he's like, oh my God, I read the ticket wrong. It's actually today. So the christening's at 12 and his flight's at 2. And then they're like, okay, hang on, let's call everyone. Let's get them round early. Her mum, who, am I crazy? Am I misremembering things? I think her mum in the radio show is played by Joan Sanderson. Yeah, I'm sure that is. I'm sort of doing that off memory, but then am I conflating that with After Henry? I don't think I am. I'm pretty sure it's Joan Sanderson in the radio show. Okay. Yeah, and... she's got the baby because she's looking after the baby, but she's gone off somewhere. They can't find her. No cell phones, so they can't ring her. You know, I haven't got the cell phone problem. And so all these things that are going wrong, and then what if people don't show up? And Miles is drunk, and blah blah blah. It's like everything is just going wrong, and it's so irritating. And it's not even in a kind of sitcom-y, like everything goes wrong kind of way. It's just annoying, and every episode is the same. It's very annoying.
Well, I think I watched maybe 8 episodes of this. Yeah, you're right. Things change. There's an arc, but I was kind of bored of it by the end. I would not say that I enjoyed this sitcom. Now, I'll be honest with you. I've enjoyed talking about it more than I thought I was going to. But
we always do that, though, don't we?
It has not filled me with. It's not filled me with passion. It's not. I've not been. Oh, great! We're going to talk about the marriage lines. There's been none of that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I think for me particularly, it really did trigger me. Like, it was like this. Yeah. This is my buttons. The kind of. Yeah. I'm a non-monogamous kind of person. I'm not into long-term relationships or blah, blah, blah. Everything that's sort of packaged up here and is presented as, yes, it's horrible, we all get that, but that's life. That is exactly like kind of what I've been railing against for like the last 15 years. And going like, no, we don't have to live like this. We can all have it. And, and society has moved on quite considerably. People don't really have the same constraints as they used to. Sure. But I think people do still go, yeah, you meet someone when you're in your 20s, you get married, you stay together forever. Like, that is still fairly, like, norm. And then you have kids just to try and make it
just a little shout out at this point for Carly, your American girlfriend.
She knows. But yeah, I think we have been kind of negative. So I want to, praise the positives. I think it's not generally kind of really laugh out loud funny, but it is very kind of... that kind of, Alan Ayckbourn, light-hearted...
It's light. It's light.
middle-class drama, yeah. And I think it works on that level. I think it's very snappy and energetic most of the time. I think it comes from the performances. Performances overall really great. And in isolation, the episodes can be quite good, but I think it's a bit samey, like you say. I think it gets a bit repetitive. But also, I did enjoy it as a cultural snapshot of another time, which is, basically what we do here. And certainly from that point of view, it is so mid-60s that it's painful. But I enjoyed that.
Well, thanks. I think we've squeezed all the pips out of the marriage lines. Oh, last thing. Do you know what the marriage lines means? Do you know what that is? That phrase?
Marriage lines. No.
It's a colloquialism for a marriage certificate. You would sign your marriage lines. So I guess in 1963 that must have been a thing that people still said. I think it's quite an old thing. But I guess before people could read, they would sign the marriage lines because they couldn't read the words. But yeah, in 1963 that must have still been a phrase with some currency, but certainly isn't anymore.
No.
So thank you everyone for listening. As Alan said, there are still a couple of series available, so I would definitely recommend going and trying a couple of episodes, and it's certainly a good cultural artifact. But thanks for listening. You can follow us on the socials in all the usual places. Instagram, we're at BritComPod. Facebook, if you just search for British Sitcom History Podcast, you'll find us.
And just before we sign off, we should tell you what we're doing next week, which would be the last of our series.
Of course.
We are going to look at something completely different.
We're coming up into the 21st century with Trolleyed.
Trolleyed?
Trolleyed is one of those sitcoms that's come up loads, as we've been talking about the more modern sitcoms. Oh, yeah, she was in Trolleyed. And I thought, what the hell's Trolleyed? So I've gone out of my way to go and watch Trolleyed, just to give it a go. And, I'm going to tip our hand here. I really liked it. So I've persuaded Alan that we're going to cover it. So we're going to talk about Trolleyed next.
Lots to talk about there, yeah, lots to talk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll come back to that next time. And that is all. Thank you so much for listening, and goodbye.
See you all soon. Bye-bye.